Bob Costas joining me here. How are you, Bob?
Now, actually, I canceled my subscriptions to Sports Illustrated, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. And now I just get all my information off randomly selected tweets.
So it's not...
I feel that's the way to go. I don't want to be behind the technological or cultural curve, so that's where I'm going.
Well, I take my cue from you journalistically, as do most people in our business, Bob. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel subscriptions and just randomly follow people on Twitter and hope that they know what they're talking about.
There you have it. On balance, you'll have a flood of misinformation, but it will be discussable misinformation and fill the vacuum that is the 24/7, 365 maw of modern sports coverage.
The maw. I like it. And it's interesting, this weekend, Bob, there was a maw in a legal tampering window for the NFL that they're looking into to see if that was tampered with. So I'm saying that there needs to be a legal tampering window before the legal tampering window, before the actual window, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense?
That sounds like a Marx Brothers routine. I'm not exactly sure what I just heard.
It does. You know, it does sound like that. Bob Costas joining me.
I'll say this on the last thing you were discussing. You look at the Rams. Jeff Fisher has done a very, very good job. I say this from a distance because I'm not at their games, because the Rams are never on Sunday Night Football, so I'm always someplace else.
Yes.
But I catch portions of their games, and you see the outcome. And the West has become much better than it was only a few years ago, obviously, with Seattle and now Arizona having upped its game. And even though San Francisco was disappointing last year, we know how good they have been over that space of time. And you think with the defense that the Rams have had over that period of time, how competitive they might have been if they had a healthy Sam Bradford. Would they have gone to the Super Bowl? No. But you're probably looking, even in that division, at a 9-7 team, 10-6 if they're lucky, over the last couple of years with any kind of quarterback play. And so making a play for Nick Foles doesn't mean that Sam Bradford is out of the picture. It means you got to be realistic. He's always hurt. Foles had his moments 2 years ago where he looked like an emerging quarterback. If he can be had at a reasonable price, then at least you've got an option. And he's probably a decent enough quarterback. If, let's say, if Arizona's, I'm temporarily forgetting, they started with Carson Palmer, then who filled in before they went to the third round?
Yeah, it was Stanton and then Lindley. And then, and then anybody.
If Stanton was good enough to keep them competitive, right? If Carson Palmer, who had fallen in status to like kind of middle of the pack guy, was good enough, Nick Foles might be good enough to make the Rams not a Super Bowl team, but a contending team or a halfway decent team based on everything else they have around them. So that's a move that from a distance makes sense to me if they can pull it off at a reasonable price.
Bob Costas joining me now, the host of Football Night in America, also calls many of the games that you see coast to coast on the MLB network, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Bob, Syracuse alum, I would love to give you the floor and just hear your thoughts on the NCAA sanctions handed down on the school, the couple of their top programs, and, of course, Jim Boeheim, the winningest coach in their hoops history.
Well, I have to emphasize, I haven't spoken to Boeheim or to Darryl Gross or to any university official since the story broke. I've read extensive news reports, but I haven't read every word of the NCAA's report. It's more than 90 pages. I haven't read every word of it. So I'm giving you a general impression. Even the university itself acknowledges that they violated rules and they skirted the spirit of some rules. They acknowledge that. Boeheim may choose to challenge some of the individual sanctions. And no matter what, for all the success he's had and for all the positives he's been for the university, this is going to be part of his legacy one way or the other, and it's not going to be a positive part. Having said that, somebody needs to step forward and say in a general way, here is the one step, even if it seems like a utopian step, here is the one step that would take care of most of what's in the NCAA rules manual. Not all of it, but you could certainly cut it to about a tenth of its present length. If every university president, and it won't happen because it's like unilaterally disarming and you know your opponents won't do it and then you'll get crushed in every game. But it's a simple thing. If every university president said the revenue-producing sports, basketball, football, potentially revenue producing in most universities, maybe in a few cases women's basketball. If every one of them had a monitor that reported directly to the university president, and no, quote, student athlete ever gets into this college or university who could not plausibly be admitted if we did not have a football or basketball team, end of problem.
Would you have a NCAA sports system as we know it, though, Bob? I don't. That's the issue, as you point out, because the number of students that get in because they can put the ball through a hoop or can spin it in a manner into the hands of a wide receiver. That is what every school president must deal with when they hire a new coach, because the coach wants to be able to get in the kids that they need to be competitive within the parameters of the academia.
And let's be honest, most alumni, most people who fill the stands, as long as sanctions don't follow, if they found out that half the team was comprised of illiterates, but the team went to the Rose Bowl or to the Final Four, they had that choice, or they had the choice of a competitive, entertaining team, but everyone was a legitimate student. Most of the alums and most of the people in the stands would choose A. That's the reality, and that's the pressure that's on university presidents.
Bob Costas joining me here now. So what do you think, just knowing, again, the university hierarchy perhaps as you do, is this the end of Jim Boeheim, do you think, in Syracuse?
No. It's not the end of Jim Boeheim unless and until he decides, and he's an independent-minded guy who has a very competitive streak and has certain resentments. If he decided that he wanted to step away, he's a very youthful and very energetic 70. If he decided he'd had enough, and I don't see that happening, that's when Jim Boeheim is done at Syracuse. But the administration there will support him, and he will be back as their head coach for the foreseeable future if he wants to be.
Bob Costas of NBC Sports joining me here now. I'm now going to ask you a question in your capacity with the MLB Network as well. The rash of arm injuries that we're seeing, Yu Darvish now, potentially Cliff Lee joining the large group of Tommy John surgery, I guess, surgically repaired pitchers in this league. Is it just the advent of knowing more about it, or is there a rash of arm injuries that Major League Baseball needs to deal with more than ever?
Well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, Tommy John surgery is much less dicey, as it figured to be, than when it first came along. It's almost always successful now, and almost always the pitcher is able to return after a year, or if he has it late in an ongoing season after a year and a half, almost always able to return at the same level as before the injury, or even sometimes better. So what the real trend is that you're seeing a lot of teams have young pitchers do it. So Darvish and Lee are kind of in a different category. But when the Mets have Matt Harvey do it, part of what they're saying is, look, here's a guy in his young 20s. We're not ready to contend yet, but this is around the corner for him. We don't want this to happen to him 2 or 3 years from now when we think or hope we might have a contending team. Let's get this out of the way now. So you're seeing it happen more with young pitchers than they used to, and part of the reason for that is that young pitchers arrive at the major leagues having put more stress on their arms than their predecessors in previous generations, because they're not just playing Little League ball or sandlot ball or even high school ball. Elite players are on travel teams that are playing close to year-round. And the way that you get scouts' attention is by throwing hard. So more and more pitchers, when they're 14, 15, 16 years old, who have potential major league ability, are putting tremendous torque and pressure on their arms and building up thousands and thousands of pitches before they ever pitch in the minor leagues, let alone the major leagues. And so the breaking point arrives not at 30 or 32 or 35. Sometimes it arrives at 23 or 24. But because the Tommy John surgery is now so sophisticated and almost always so successful, the teams are making that decision more frequently, and so you're seeing a larger number of Tommy John surgeries. Now, Cliff Lee will be 37 in August, and I'm not sure how old Yu Darvish is. He's got to be around 30 or somewhere in that area. So they've thrown a lot of pitches, Lee at the big league level, and Darvish between Japan and and the big leagues, a lot of pitchers over the years.
Last question for you, Bob. How is Major League Baseball going to look in the Rob Manfred era, and how might it differ from the Selig era? Tell me about this new commissioner.
Well, I like him a lot. He's a really smart guy. He knows where all the landmines are. He knows all the dynamics of all the issues and all the individuals involved because he has served for so long as Selig's chief lieutenant. He will be respectful of Selig. This is a flawed analogy, but, when Billy Payne came in to run Augusta National, he didn't change the policy about women right away because he was respectful of their traditions and didn't want to rile anybody. But you knew that was coming as soon as he found the right time. I don't think it'll take Manfred quite as long to make some of the changes, but there'll be a respectful period before he reconsiders Pete Rose. But I wouldn't be surprised if within a year, if in 2016, Pete Rose's situation isn't reconsidered, or a commission isn't appointed to reconsider shoeless Joe Jackson, or to clarify some of the contradictions that surround Hall of Fame voting. And then more important to contemporary fans, he's already indicated, and Selig had started the ball rolling on this, and Manfred's just going to push it forward. He's already indicated that he understands that there's a big difference between baseball's appealing leisurely pace and a lethargic pace that drives even real baseball fans crazy. A 3-2 game should not take 3.5 hours. It just shouldn't. That's the wrong pace. And they've put, as you know, a series of at least experimental steps in place that might, as Austin Powers once said, keep things moving.
Bob, thanks so much for calling in. You're the best.
You got it, Rich. See ya.
You bet. We'll chat down the line.
Bye.
That's Bob Costas.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.